Mr. Torrent was paying for every second Hamilton's joy, sashayed to the minibar, poured the water, and sashayed out of the office again. Hamilton observed that it also served to distract Malcolm Torrent from the stress of whatever it was that had brought him there. Hamilton felt Maserov was taking far too long to arrive, but Joy's comings and goings eased the 90 seconds they had to endure before his arrival. Few lawyers below the 5th years ever spoke to Malcolm Torrent in person, and all of the first years were instructed not to engage with him if ever they should come upon him anywhere in the building. There was an unwritten rule within the firm that costs and disbursements that the lawyers couldn't otherwise hide should be buried in one of the many hundreds of files the firm had opened under the name of Torrent Industries. As a second-year lawyer, Stephen Maserov knew of this unwritten law and thought that, since no lawyers below 5th year had ever been known to attend a conference with Mr. Torrent, he must have been caught putting disbursements on a Torrent Industries file that properly belonged somewhere else. Perhaps the unwritten rule was not a rule but a myth. But with his own eyes he'd seen other lawyers, senior and junior, billing Torrent Industries for non-Torrent costs, and there had been no repercussions, none that he'd been aware of. Maybe it was an unwritten rule that had been implemented by so many at the firm, so often, that Torrent Industries had got wise to it. Perhaps Mr. Torrent had been alerted to it by one of Freely Savage's disgruntled former staff members. There were 5 disgruntled former staff members for every current staff member. They had even formed a support group, the FSS, the Freely Savage Survivors. Stephen Maserov was worried that an example was going to be made of him. This would explain why he, a second year, had been summoned to Hamilton's office for a meeting with Hamilton and Mr. Torrent. The firm was going to offer him up as a sacrifice to Torrent. What other possible explanation could there be? Joy knocked at the door, stood at it without entering, and announced, "Stephen Maserov is here," whereupon Stephen Maserov entered Hamilton's corner office. "Maserov, I don't believe you've met Malcolm Torrent." Of course he hadn't met Malcolm Torrent. He'd spoken to Hamilton no more than 6 times, and on most of these occasions, when he had gone home at the end of the day and told his wife about it, she had poured him a double scotch to help him recover. This was in the days before they had separated, or, more precisely, before she had asked him to leave. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Torrent," he said, as he and Malcolm Torrent shook hands. "Maserov, I want to thank you for your work on the Hoffner file." Stephen Maserov's forced smile froze, as did the layer of sweat that adhered to his back, a miniature vertical Dead Sea that no shirt or suit jacket could be trusted to hide. Stephen Maserov had not worked on the Hoffner file. Not only that, he'd never heard of the Hoffner file. Should he accept thanks for work he hadn't done in the hope that it would help him, or should he immediately volunteer that he hadn't worked on the Hoffner file and hope for praise for his honesty, or at least a quick and neutral return to the position he was in when he had walked into the room? There was no time to consider it, no time to call his wife, even assuming she was free and agreeable to taking his call. Following the birth of their second child, she had resumed teaching on a part-time basis, and he knew she would probably be teaching at that very minute. They had met when they had both been teachers. They had married and, soon after putting a deposit on a house, reached the conclusion that at least one of them needed a better-paying job. So, Stephen Maserov got himself into law school as a mature-aged student, and Eleanor supported them both on her teacher's salary. The arrival of their first son, however, and the years and money sacrificed so that Stephen could study law, took a toll on their marriage. They thought things might improve when Stephen took a job at a prestigious city law firm.